Hi, I want to share with you about my diversity field experience. I discovered the Armenian people and the country of Armenia. This is a country that I found was very welcoming and filled with tenacious people. It started with our assignment. I found an Armenian festival up in St. Paul on September 15th. I grabbed a couple friends. We headed up there, and soon we were swept into an Armenian community at St. Sahag Church, buying homemade crafts and drinking coffee, eating sweet and savory foods, listening to music, which had flutes and much movement, while engaging in conversation with tenacious women from a country that we didn't know existed just a few hours before. So, some of my first impressions were the food was excellent. The people were very welcoming. I ended up talking with women, and just some of the colors stood out to me, red, blue, and yellow, and some of the symbols that they used. So the food, I found some of it was familiar. It's been influenced from some neighboring countries. They had sweet and spicy foods, warm spices like nutmeg, cakes. You can see pictured here is the baklava. They also made burek, which is like an herb or cheese-filled pastry. They serve coffee, which is made very strong. Turkish coffee, they use fine ground coffee. So it is Armenian, but it has the Turkish flavor where they make it in these little pots. They served spiced meat. There was rice, mint lemonade, and something called jingalav hots, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later. So we went to the food first, then we went over to where they had some things on display that were artsy, crafty things, and there I just these friendly women started talking to me, and I said, so we tried this good food, but I'm wondering, is Armenia still a country, and why don't people like me hear about it? And it's Armenian people, and they were quick to say, let me tell you. So I met Miriam first. And I found out, yes, Armenia is on the map, and she was talking to us about many things. So here, I'll just show you Western Armenia is this yellow region, and this refers to the land that was historically belonging to Armenians. And the current Republic of Armenia's land is the orange region. So you can see what they own now is quite small. It's landlocked. They used to have land that reached all the way to the Black Sea, and some of this is now Turkey. So, yes, Armenia is a country today. The 1915 genocide and prior massacres by the Turks led to remnants of these people who are oppressed, displaced, and scattered the Armenians. They have been oppressed. They fled to mountains and hills and surrounding areas and eventually ended up all over the world. Some of the countries where you'll find the highest population is Russia, the United States, France, Argentina, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Turkey, Canada, Ukraine, Greece, and Australia. And everyone I met has a story and a family history to tell. So Miriam was who I mentioned I met first. She came to the US when she was 8 years old from Armenia. I also met Masha, who moved to Minnesota when she was 15, and Michelle, who was born in the States, but her family is Armenian and they are from Turkey. So meet Miriam here. She's on the right. Lovely woman with dark hair. Miriam especially talked about some of the food that we'd eaten. She loves to make authentic Armenian food. Her husband is from the States here, but she has taught him how to make the food, and she told us about a website where we can go and learn also, and showed us pictures of her family making this flatbread that they spend hours making lots of it, and they fill it with herbs and spices. I got to taste it. It was very good. So it's called jingalav hots, traditional food they ate. She said she and her family love to go back to Armenia whenever they can, and they still have family there. And she's very proud of the current prime minister. She and Masha told me about Nikol Pashinyan. I asked about him because they had t-shirts with his face on it, and I couldn't read the words. Um, and they said that, yeah, he led a peaceful protest and he's working to make positive change, and they're very proud of him. So Miriam was my first Armenian I got to speak with. And she also told us about an instrument that we heard in some background music, and this is called the duduk. It is a soft tone reed instrument. It's a double reed instrument from Armenia. It's made from aged apricot wood, and it can make quite a somber sound. It's quite beautiful. So it's a traditional Armenian instrument that is still played. So there were many things on the art and craft table. And so we were just perusing some jewelry, looking at some different things. And Masha was another woman standing there with very curly blonde hair, almost like an African texture, and blue eyes. So she looked quite different than Miriam. She loved to talk about the different things we could see on the table. And when I found out Masha came here when she was 15, I said, "Did you know English? And what was it like to start school in a new country with no English skills?" And Masha was very open about the fact that it was pretty awful. She said they didn't know what to do with me. It was awful at first. I got in trouble for doing math in a different way as I was taught in Armenia. They couldn't understand me, but it got better. So she wouldn't show her work. She was really smart and they thought she was cheating. And finally, her aunt was able to advocate for her and explain that she really did know how to do the work. So she said, she did start to learn English and pick it up quickly. And Masha is currently finishing her PhD in psychology. So in 20 years, she's come a long way. But she said there really wasn't a lot offered to her in the schools when she came, and that was really hard. So Masha explained to us some of the symbols we were seeing. The Armenian symbol of pomegranates was very common in some of the pieces of art and jewelry that we saw. And she said, pomegranates have this red juice that leaks out. It's like the blood that was spilt from the Armenians because of the genocide and the ethnic cleansing. But the seeds are like the people that are held together in this shell. And even though their territory now they have is very small and they're spread out, they are held together by what they have in common and their strong community. Next, we met Michelle. So as we looked at some of the pottery that was there, it had these beautiful etchings in it. And Michelle came over and explained to us what she does. She rolls out some clay and then she impresses her grandma's doilies into the clay and adds embellishments. She has all these doilies from her grandma, and her grandma was the first female dentist in Istanbul, so there's a history of them being strong women in her family, and she's definitely a strong leader. And she just loved to share with us her pride in her history, in her people. She said Armenian people have been through a lot, but it has not broken their spirit. And she was born in Michigan, but just loves to be a part of her Armenian heritage. Here you can see some of the coffee pots that they use to make small amounts of strong coffee. So we went back to a service at St. Sahag Church, and it was quite an experience. As we entered the sanctuary, we saw Michelle, and she said, "Welcome back," and she explained to us a little bit about what we would experience at the service. It was very beautiful. There was colors, as you can see, gold, blue, red. They would sing, there was a choir singing, and they would sing, and then a leader would sing a little bit. And I don't know if you can hear it in the background, but yeah, it was quite beautiful experience. There was incense, there were bells. Every sense is involved. The stained glass windows were beautiful, and candles. So we heard a reflection that was from Jim. Here you can meet Jim. He had a nice deep voice. And Jim shared with us from the book of Ephesians, the scripture that says, "Be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, for the days are evil." Jim talked about the current state of affairs in our world where hatred, separation, and discord seem to be ever-present themes. 3 words that Jim gave us to summarize how Jesus gave us an example to live in this way were love, service, and sacrifice. And Jim shared a powerful testimony of what love, service, and sacrifice looks like in his own heart and life. He shared his story of how he'd been robbed, beaten, and kidnapped years ago by a group of men. Jim was scarred by this traumatic experience, and he had years of struggle and pain, which included emotional, physical, and mental pain. So years later, he realized he had a choice. He could hold on to anger, resentment, and hostility to the people who had hurt him, or he could embrace forgiveness and just let the memory go and release this evil. He told us how he met the aunt of one of the individuals that had beaten and hurt him, and she said that he must hate her nephew. Jim's response was profound and represents an Armenian spirit. He said, "No, I don't hate your nephew or the others. I hate what was done to me. I don't hate them. I hope they can live full, happy, and productive lives." Jim talked about the Armenian church community here and said, "May it also be a place of peace, hope, and healing." So after this beautiful service, we were warmly welcomed and encouraged to stay for a meal. They said they share a meal every Sunday, and we were offered a chicken main dish with a traditional Armenian pumpkin dish called gara pama. You can see it here. They had a rice dish, flatbread, and salad on the side also. So the gara pama is served around harvest time as we celebrate Thanksgiving. So they clean out that pumpkin, they put in rice and honey and dried fruit, and they bake it. We met Katie, and she graciously told us about this food. Her husband's from Lebanon, but they're Armenians, and they met in college. Then we sat down and we spoke with Alicia. She looks Hispanic. It was very interesting. But as we shared the meal, she talked with us, and she said at St. Sahag Armenian Church, everyone is family. And she pointed to a little girl who had come over, and she said, "She has many mothers. You are family now, and you can be our daughters too." They come from Turkey. So as we sat, we also talked more with Michelle, and she just enlightened us more about, the political state in Armenia as they came out of communism, and it would never be quite right, the land that had been taken away, and the way things had changed. And she said, it was like they were handed a paper spoon to scoop their portion when everyone else had been given silver spoons. So Michelle also told us about Operation Nemesis and her great uncle Armin Garo, who hunted down the Turks who had murdered their people. And so I did some research. I was like, is this for real? And yes, Armin Garo came up when I did a search. He was the mastermind along with Shahan Natali in organizing Operation Nemesis, in which Armenian nationalists hunted down and assassinated leaders of the genocide. So an estimated 1.5 million Armenians were killed between 1915 and 1922, being the first genocide to be called by this name, genocide coined in 1943 by Raphael Lemkin. So after the genocide in Nazi Germany, he looked into what happened to the Armenians. So I did some more research. Here's just a timeline I created from 1915 up until present. The Turkish government denies that the genocide even took place. They say it was just a result of World War I, but with the population reduced by 1.5 million and the well-documented evidence of forced displacements, killings, rapes, and kidnappings, it's undeniable. And I don't have time to show you all that I learned. There's a traveling exhibit that I hope you could view even right here online. It's very interesting, tells many stories. But I wanted to close with this quote by William Saroyan. It was on the church wall. It says, "I should like to see any power of the world destroy this race, this small tribe of unimportant people whose wars have all been fought and lost, whose structures have crumbled, literature is unread, music is unheard, and prayers are no more answered. Go ahead, destroy Armenia. See if you can do it. Send them into the desert without bread or water. Burn their homes and churches. Then see if they will not laugh, sing, and pray again. For when two of them meet anywhere in the world, see if they will not create a new Armenia. And this is what I experienced myself. And you can experience and learn